podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket.
The Synod on Synodality can definitely be a divisive topic in the church, and we're joined this week by Luke Coppen, who's the Senior Correspondent for The Pillar, which is a Catholic media project focused on smart, faithful, and serious journalism from committed and informed Catholics who love the church. By the by, it's excellent, so if you haven't checked it out yet, it's at pillarcatholic.com. Luke writes on all things Catholic, and today he's walking us through the Synod on Synodality, including some background for those who haven't really followed it, as well as some of the major critiques and possible fruits of synodality. It's a conversation that cuts through some of the rhetoric, in my opinion anyways, and we hope it's helpful for you. God bless you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good day. Good day. We realized, so if you're watching on YouTube, then you will notice that we have a guest joining us this week. So we'd like to say welcome. Hi, Luke. Luke Coppen. He is working with The Pillar, and we'll let him tell you all about that because he's the expert in what he does. But, you will notice that also we are missing a face today, and that is because Nicole was not able to join us today. She just moved houses and is starting the new academic term. She's a professor now. She had a bit of a crazy week, so she wasn't able to join us this morning. She said she might explode if she tried to join us at 8 a.m. her time to record before she ended up
we don't
working.
We don't want to cause any kinds of explosions here. That's not what we're about.
That's
so
right.
We're like,
yeah,
you know what?
Spontaneous human
That's
combustion.
right.
Yeah. However, Luke, do you want to share where are you? Where are you joining us from?
Yeah, so I'm coming to you from England, specifically southern England, probably more specifically a county called Hampshire, which is right down near the seaside.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
That's lovely. I was going to share before we started recording and then I forgot, but I actually talked to 3 consecrated virgins from England, and one of them I think was just recently consecrated in, I think it was in the south of England as well, which was really fun. So it's still on my bucket list to travel back, because I've been to London and a couple of other places in England, but I haven't been. I really would love to drive the seaside route,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You're never. One of the great things about being here is you're never really far from the seaside. I don't know about where you are, but you can't be more than a couple of hours away.
That's awesome.
Wherever you go.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. I used to live in Nova Scotia, so the sea, it seeps into your veins, you know?
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Seaside people are different, I think, aren't they?
Yes.
Because of that,
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Rachel came back she went on a visit to Hawaii
this summer.
So
beautiful.
So we may lose you to Hawaii.
Yeah.
I know. That's on my bucket list too. This is actually a good question. If there was one place that's kind of on your list that you would love to travel to that you haven't traveled to, where would that be? I can ask both of you guys.
Rachel, you can go.
Yeah, mine was Hawaii. That's the thing. Mine was Hawaii for a long time, and then that's been scratched off. So it's been like, okay, what now? I have cousins in England as well, Luke. So I visited there many times. But so yeah, I'm trying to think. I think probably right now maybe somewhere in Africa, because that's just a continent that I haven't ever been to, or something like, going up to Alaska or the Antarctic or something, seeing a place that's just very, very different from anywhere else in the world, that kind of thing, Yeah. I'm kind of really intrigued by just natural beauty that's something you can't really
untouched.
That's untouched, or something you can't really imagine from what you know, based on what you know. You can't really get there from the things you've seen. You have to actually just see it to know it. So I'm kind of interested in that kind of thing. So somewhere like that.
Nice.
What about you, Luke?
Nice. How about you, Luke?
I think it'll be India.
Okay.
But just for a couple of reasons. One, that I've just kind of fallen into reporting quite a bit about the Catholic Church in India, which is fascinating and as complex as the country itself. And also as well, we have quite a lot of parishioners who are originally from India in my parish. They belong to the Syro Malabar Catholic Church,
Right.
one of the 23 Eastern Catholic churches. And it's been a great pleasure to get to know them and to share some of their liturgical life, which they bring to the parish. And I'm just intrigued to know, where it is they came from, what this country is that formed them and made them into such interesting and impressive people.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Have you been to India, Rachel?
Yeah, no. So I'm Indian, and I was born there.
Right. That's right.
I was born there.
I always forget that every time.
We lived there till I was 5.5, and then we moved to Dubai, and then we moved to Canada, and then now I live in the States. It's a whole big thing, but it's I still have lots of family there. I'm from Goa though, so that's like more of just a Latin Rite play. I mean, it's not. I mean, everywhere is mostly Hindu, but a lot of concentration of Catholics in Goa, and also in the South, where the Syro Malabar Rite originate. So, so that's kind of cool. I hope you get to go. It is a very. I mean, I will say I've been to Bombay and Goa, and the country is so diverse, truly very, very, very diverse. I can't even speak to anywhere else in the country just from being in those two places. But being in Mumbai, I guess now, when I was born, it was called Bombay. So in my head, I always have to make that switch.
It's Bombay.
Yeah. It's so in Mumbai, it's very interesting. There's no other city in the world that I've experienced that's quite like it. It's just kind of a miracle that it keeps going. You're just like, it's just a miracle. Like every day you're sort of like, this is a miracle, because there's just like billions of people in all kinds of stages in life just making it through. And they still have, at last I visited, it was a long time ago, it was 2010. I spent a whole summer there. And I always tell the story, I was on a bus, and they still had bus conductors, like human bus conductors, get your ticket and give you tickets. Yeah. And there's like 1 million people packed onto this bus, like people hanging off the side, like all this kind of stuff. But they know that you got on, like they know that you're a new passenger on the bus. Like, how do they know that? Like how do they know to find me in this, like, it's crazy, but they do. And, they get you your ticket and everything. But anyways, it is a very interesting place. I hope, I don't know. It sounds like you haven't been there before ever, but I'm just, I hope you get to go. I'm sure.
Listen, we'll just make a trip all together. We'll have an in the thicket pilgrimage.
To India. That would be
collaborate
wild.
with the pillar. We'll do it. It'll be great. Yeah, that's right. That's awesome. My place that I want to go is New Zealand, but I won't. The only reason really is because it's like for me, it's all the views, like the beauty of the ocean and the mountains, and like being in Ireland was amazing. And that was my kind of number one bucket list thing for a while. And it was just unreal. The vistas and the scenery and driving around the whole of the island. And it was unreal. So like New Zealand, I would like to do the same, just like drive around the whole thing.
I have been there for World Youth Day. I went there for World Youth Day. Like the days in the diocese we spent there, because I'm from the Hamilton Diocese in Canada, and they have a Hamilton Diocese in New Zealand. So they kind of linked us up, which was really sweet. And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Yeah. So I hope you would. I want to go back. Like that's a place that I would totally go back.
Again, pilgrimage. We'll do a New Zealand India pilgrimage.
Very off the beaten path pilgrimages here.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Yeah. That's good. Okay, so without going too much into that travel path, I could talk about that forever. True. But to the topic of the day. So we, if you're just new joining us to listen this week, we've been doing kind of a series this first part of our 5th season about divisive things in the church. So all kinds of issues, and essentially looking at these things so that we can hear different perspectives on people's experiences of these things in the church, but also so that we can understand what it means to have fruitful dialogue about things, even to the point of, like Bishop Barron would say, vehement disagreement, passionate disagreement about things, and still be able to maintain relationship with other people, and be able to do that in charity with the full expression of truth and charity together, so that neither is sacrificed. So that's what we're hoping. If you've been listening to the series so far, we're hoping that you're kind of getting a sense of that, and maybe that it's helping us all to think a little bit about how we're doing that really in our everyday lives. But today we are talking about something that definitely is a big question for lots of people, which is the Synod on Synodality. And so we thought we reached out to Luke to see if he would join us, and he graciously said yes. And part of the reason is because he's written a lot of articles on the Pillar about the Synod on Synodality, and they're so clearly written. They're very well, just when you read it, you really get a sense of what the Synod is and what some of the issues are very clearly, which is so helpful for cutting through some of the rhetoric kind of on both sides of things, but then also really being able to examine, some of the things that are at issue in the Synod, or with the way things are being run, or how it's being done, or things like that. So thank you again, Luke, for joining us this week. Yes. We're so happy to have you. And maybe we could just give you a few minutes. Do you want to just share a little bit about yourself and your work?
Yes, of course. So my title is the Senior Correspondent of the Pillar, which is a US Catholic website, a small US Catholic website that was founded a couple of years ago by J.D. Flynn and Ed Condon, and has grown over those 2 or 3 years. And I joined in 2022, and previously I've been working my whole career in Catholic journalism, and I began with a magazine here in England called the Catholic Herald, and I was the editor of that from 2004 to 2020. And then after that, I joined the Catholic News Agency, where I spent a couple of very happy years reporting on the Vatican and the Catholic Church in Europe. And I'm a convert to Catholicism. I became a Catholic at university when I was doing a postgraduate diploma in journalism at the university in Cardiff, Wales. It's been beautiful to see how beautiful to look back and see how God has sort of been drawing me into this life of Catholic journalism, which I would have imagined as a youngster doing. It would have been the furthest thing from my mind. But somehow it's all come together.
It's amazing.
And here I am still at it, 25 years later.
Awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the Catholic Herald is a great is a great publication. I love that. It must have been really interesting too to work at the Vatican, to be like, were you kind of on location a lot, or were you
so this was in 2020, so it was the time of the COVID shutdown, so no one was moving anywhere.
No location.
And I was based in England. But in a way, I suppose this is debatable, but I've always thought that you can cover the Vatican reasonably well from anywhere in the world, if just because it's a matter of sort of studying what Vatican says and attempting to interpret for an audience what that means. So that interpretation you can kind of do, I think, from anywhere. Although, of course, reporting is very helpful to be on the ground and to be able to bump into people and form your contacts. On the other hand, there's the downside that then you begin to owe certain things, or may feel that you owe certain things to the people who are your sources, so it becomes more complicated. So I just outsider, a Vatican outsider.
A Vatican outsider. I love that. How have you find, like, this is totally not even on the topic today, but I think it's actually worth sharing. How have you found that kind of taking those things, like what the Vatican says, or what different documents in the church saying, kind of translating that for people into readable bites? How have you found that's affected your own faith, kind of as a convert coming into the church and digging through all of these things?
I mean, there's sort of many ways I could answer that, I think, but probably the one that immediately springs to mind is just that sort of the whole of the Catholic faith is sort of an act of communication. Jesus' incarnation is a kind of communication from God the Father. We're constantly communicating with each other, and communication is a kind of responsibility, and you have a responsibility for everything you say and everything you write. And I think you always have to bear the reader or the audience in mind in everything you're saying, and it's not just what you like to write yourself, or what you would like the truth to be, or what you would like the Vatican to be saying, but what has actually happened, and how can you communicate that in a way that's that's simple and emphasizes the main point, but without losing the nuances that there are, or the complexities that there are in almost every human topic.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a challenge any time that we write, or any time that we speak or comment on the church, is to do those things. Like, what is the essence? Let's communicate the essence of it, and then not forget there are all these little nuances as well that we need to appreciate to be able to sort of understand the whole picture.
Yeah. It's very refreshing to me to hear you speak as a journalist in this way, because I'm just like, there's just so much, there's like such an, we live in sort of an information scape, and there's so many approaches to how people write about things. And a lot of times I think a lot of what you're saying is missed, or is just not even the point of a particular publication. I mean, and just people kind of can publish, anywhere now, and anyone can do it. And not that, maybe there's some advantages to that. I'm not totally knocking all of it, but it's just refreshing to hear your, I think your character and your training kind of coming together, like your faith, your character, your training actually coming together, and how you approach reporting. It's just really lovely to hear, I think.
I'm thinking of like poor Rachel right now in the context of like the U.S. election hearing just CNN on one side, Fox News on the other side.
Exactly. There are other approaches.
Well, I mean, maybe I've been offering a slightly idealistic picture of what journalism is. I think journalism's history is rooted in propaganda as well, and in the expression of rich interests and things like that. So that's always been part and parcel of journalism, and I wouldn't deny that at all. And, I wouldn't claim that what I write is the objective truth, where what everyone else writes is writing.
Right?
Sort of malicious propaganda, nothing like that. But I think that's an ideal that I think is good to strive for in journalism. I personally think it's good to strive for in journalism, no matter how far you are from achieving it.
And the thing is, which I think we're going to get into this, like the objective truth can never, like none of us can actually see it objectively. We all, like, we all come with ourselves, and we kind of have to, in a way. Like, I think we have to own that, but it's sort of how you own that, that makes the difference, I think. Anyways, but thanks. It was just really lovely. It's lovely to hear that ideal. It was just really lovely.
Rachel, you're so cute. I love it. Well then, so maybe we could ask Luke if you want to maybe explain a little bit about kind of what is a synod in the first place, and then what is the synod on synodality?
Yeah. So, I mean, these are really big questions. And I think it's fair to say that those things that you just asked me to define are currently being debated worldwide in the church. And therefore, it's really difficult to give a sort of a clear and simple and sort of uncontroversial definition of synodality, of synod on synodality, of the global synodal process. All those things are massively contested. It's something that I found quite helpful in thinking about what is happening in the Catholic Church today around synodality is, what does Pope Francis say it is? Because after all, he's arguably, without Pope Francis's election, we wouldn't have this big emphasis in the church on synodality, the synodal process. We wouldn't have the synod on synodality. So what does Pope Francis say that it is? We have so many competing definitions. Pope Francis has given various definitions of what synodality is, but something that struck me is a rather concise definition that he gave once, quite in the early stages, where he said it's basically three things. It's that we walk together as a church, it's that we question together, and that finally we discern together in a kind of prayerful way what to do. Now that's the simple kind of heart of what Pope Francis believes that synodality is. But then we've got how is it working out in the church itself? The church itself is phenomenally complex, as we know. I mean, so many, over 1 billion members, covering so many different cultures. It's a big, complicated topic. But Pope Francis took this idea that he has that we need to learn as Catholics to sort of walk together. We need to learn again to walk together. We need to learn to question together, and that we need to learn to discern together in a prayerful way. And he, I think, believes that he can get this process moving in the church by establishing this global synodal process, also known as the Synod on Synodality. And this is a process in which he wants every Catholic in the world to be involved, because as we were saying before we began, the Catholic Church is the Latin Church, but it's also the 23 Eastern Catholic churches around the world, and he wants everyone from all these groups to be involved, and that in itself is quite complex, because those Eastern Catholic churches have a tradition of synodality, if you like. I mean, it's a new word, but looking back, they have a synodal structure, which they preserve since the beginning of of Christianity. So already you can see a kind of perhaps a potential problem there, that they have this. There's already this really established idea of what the synodal church is. And then you have Pope Francis's idea, and Pope Francis in October 2021. He announced that there's going to be this global synodal process that was going to begin with a consultation. That was going to be the first stage, in which he hoped that every single person in the world, I mean literally everyone in the world, not just Catholic, would be involved in this synodal process. This was his dream. Like, we're going beyond the confines of the Catholic Church, the visible confines, and we're asking everyone, what do you think the Church should be focused on? So you may have been involved in some of those consultations yourself at that time. They happened in many dioceses around the world. And then after about a year or so of that, the results were gathered up, the feedback, and then we went into a continental stage of the synodal process, where there were meetings in the inhabited continents. And those, I think that was the stage when everyone began to go their own way, because the continents are so different, Africa and North America. Such different ways of life, different cultures. So everyone did it in their own way at that stage, and came up with their own kind of distinctive process. And then we've entered now the kind of so-called universal stage, in which everyone's gone to Rome. At least selected representatives of local churches have gone to Rome for a two-part assembly, which is also called the Synod on Synodality. This is a bit confusing, because the Synod on Synodality is this meeting, this two-part meeting in Rome, but also the kind of the overall process as well. And we've had the first session of that, which was last October, a month-long assembly in which the participants attempted to sort of gather all this feedback that had been collected worldwide, and then refined at the continental stage, and to decide and look at that and decide what it was that they felt that the Church should be doing in the future. And by all accounts, that was a very long and grueling experience for the participants.
I heard. Even following, I followed Bishop Barron, for example, when he was, sharing some of the stuff, and just the volume of meetings, and the length of them, and the material that was covered. It sounds overwhelming. It sounds overwhelming.
I think like a purgatorial experience, I think, for the participants.
That's right.
And I think at that stage, just before the first big meeting in Rome, there was an immense amount of expectation in the Catholic Church worldwide among Catholics. So, was there about to be some kind of revolution in Catholic teaching or in Catholic practice? And everything seemed to be on the table at that stage. But following that meeting, a few months later, Pope Francis decided that certain matters would be taken out of the synod and be examined by study groups, so-called study groups of experts who would be reporting to the Vatican about these issues. And these are subjects like women deacons, which we heard a lot about before. And I think also sort of areas like the Church teaching on sexuality, these perennially controversial subjects were taken out of that, and therefore it seems that they won't be figuring in the next session, the second one, which is going to be next month. So I think as that's happened, I think the attitude or the kind of energy around the synods kind of evaporating. And people are, I think, going to be coming to this second stage with a lot less of that kind of sense of anxiety or excitement about whether there's going to be some huge and dramatic changes as a result of this particular meeting.
Right.
I think the stakes have been dramatically lowered by Pope Francis.
Right.
But I don't think that means that nothing happens as a result, and that there aren't any changes down in the pipeline or even quite soon.
Right.
So but I think there's a kind of expectations have been lowered dramatically. And I think that's sort of where we are at the moment. And I think there's a kind of exhaustion around the topic of synodality among Catholics. And I think it's also fair to say that synodality is almost a kind of, it has barely reached in the pews in the Catholic Church. It's been very much people that are already very well engaged with the Catholic Church, or already hold positions within the Church as lay people or ordained people or religious, have been engaged with it. But a rather small section of the Catholic population, the total Catholic population, has probably even heard of synodality, I think.
Right. It's so interesting to me. Because I remember, I'm not sure what you were involved in, Rachel, or what any of the consultation stuff that you did, but I definitely remember being kind of part of, in a number of ways, end up getting, roped into these consultations and things like that. And it was very interesting to go through the questions and to see, to have a chance to think for myself, so what are the things that, that I'm seeing as, priority, whatever it has to change. But then I also remember the kind of thought of going through that and being like, I'm not sure, it's very unclear to me how this will translate into kind of global church things, or I could kind of see some of the pitfalls of, if we're asking people, everybody to come together. So those who are not Catholic, as you say, those who are not well catechized, those who are, so whose conscience is not well formed, or those kind of things. And then we're asking everybody to comment. It just feels, partly that's me because I don't like mess. I find that very hard to process, particularly around things like Catholic doctrine and dogma, which necessitate clarity. So for me, that was kind of a big challenge. So maybe, do you want to share, what are some of those kind of pitfalls that have been identified, or in practice, the challenges with synodality?
Yeah, well, I suppose we're talking about what are the main critiques of the synodal process so far, and I think they are. You just captured quite a bit of that. I think this sense of that we don't really know what synodality is. I think, therefore, we don't know where it's heading as well. Yeah, and then there's a sense of at least at the beginning, that there were no limits. There's no definition. There's no beginning and end of what's going to be discussed here. And I think that sort of lack of definition has allowed activists to attempt to define what the synodal process is, and to give their version of it, either negative or positive. I think that there was a space that opened up there for that. But that's why I think it's important to go back to what Pope Francis has been saying. And his message has been quite consistent on it, that it's this quite simple or even spiritual process, if you like, of walking together, questioning together, discerning together. So for him, it's not so much about particular issues. It's not so much about things that we have sort of strong feelings about ourselves, like whether there should be women deacons or whether church teaching should change on X, Y, or Z. He says it isn't about that. It's about this process, going through this process together, which he admits and he constantly underlines is a difficult process of engaging with other people who you disagree with, and trying to genuinely listen to what their concerns are and where they're coming from.
Right.
So yeah, it's that, and I think as well, I think there's been various sort of quite specific critiques of the process. One was, I think that a very pertinent one, a very interesting one, is that priests have been left out of the process at every stage. Yeah, so parish priests specifically.
Right.
So the way that synodality is often presented is bishops and lay people come together to discern the future of the church, leaving out the very people who are working daily on the front lines in parishes, our priests. And that became very clear at the first session of the Synod on Synodality at the Vatican. So they attempted to correct that by holding a meeting with parish priests from around the world a few months ago at the Vatican.
Right, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that might seem like a small omission. Perhaps some people might think that's a small omission, like not to really bring priests along with the whole process. But if you think about who would actually translate any kind of changes or any kind of new vision or any sort of revitalization in parishes, then it's quite likely to be led by priests with, ideally with lots of lay people who are also inspired by it. So it's in a way that's a rather bad design fault, I think, in the actual process itself. Not talking about Pope Francis's vision of what synodality should be, in the actual process of discernment worldwide that's happened.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think also as well, just because it's a process in which participation is basically voluntary, those who are most enthusiastic about certain changes in the church are more motivated to participate than those who are content, or those who have a different relationship with the church, or less kind of antagonized relationship. I don't know if that's the right way to express it, but a more kind of a less troubled relationship with the church. So I think that's been a particular problem as well. Like truly, how can you be truly representative of the church? And also as well, another critique is that participation rates have been very low if you look at it proportionally to the amount of Catholics around the world. So especially, you could see that especially in the diocesan stage, where 1% of Catholics in a particular diocese would respond, less than 1% of an entire nation's Catholics would take part. So the argument was, how could you sort of say on the basis of that, this is what Catholics want, this is what Catholics feel should happen with the church? You just don't have the information statistically. You don't have a kind of the evidence, of what Catholics are thinking truly. And as you go sort of higher and higher up with the synodal process, fewer and fewer people are taking part, and they're more and more. I mean, elite is a controversial word to use in the Catholic Church. We're all equal, but more and more people who are very much on the inside of the church and hold positions with it and within it, and with particular organisations and so on. And someone who's incredibly devout but lives in a parish in the middle of nowhere just isn't going to have any input into this. Now it's kind of gone off now. The process has gone. So I think that's another critique. All these criticisms, of course, have been answered by people who support the synod and see it as a truly necessary thing in the life of the church. And from their point of view, the synod is an attempt to answer a real need in the Catholic Church. And that need, they often say, is that Catholics have sort of lost the art of talking to each other, of cooperating with each other, as our societies have become polarized politically, and obviously socially polarized as well, socially divided. But the Catholic community itself has lost the ability to sort of discuss these issues or any issues civilly. And they say that the synod is, the format in which a genuine exchange can happen, and these polarized issues can be depolarized, and you can come to some kind of new understanding or new way forward that you never would have had if everyone hadn't come together. And that can be understood spiritually as the Holy Spirit taking this kind of chaos and all these different opinions and harmonizing it into what God Himself wants. There are every critique you have has a response, has
Right.
had a response to it, and the debate has gone on and on along those lines. A response to that might be that, I mean, some people, I think, sort of theologically are kind of concerned about how there's been such a great emphasis on the Holy Spirit throughout the process, maybe to the detriment of other parts of church teaching. The whole of church teaching,
Right.
about the fact that the church has been here for thousands and thousands of years and has traditions and customs and so on. And I'm not expressing this point very well, but it's been an interesting part of the debate.
Yeah. Because we bring everything with us. It's not just a matter of, blank slate, Holy Spirit, what is the Holy Spirit saying, but everything in continuity from our whole history and everything in Revelation, all the things that God has revealed. Yeah.
Yeah, you put that in such a good way. And also as well, like, how do we know? I mean, just because Catholics come together and pray for the Holy Spirit's intercession and blessing doesn't mean that it's necessarily the Holy Spirit will be the one who produces the result. We don't have a kind of guarantee that the synodal process will be the outcome of the Holy Spirit. This is an argument that's kind of that often comes out. So can we really trust it? And I think perhaps trust is maybe the key word to describe what's the sort of the strengths and weaknesses of the synodal process. Is that Catholics who are unable to trust that the process is leading somewhere good or leading to renewal are kind of opting out of it and don't really want a part of it. Those who feel that this is the kind of necessary change in the church are able to trust it and to sort of go along with it, are the ones who talk about its fruits and can believe they can see fruits already. I mean, I think one sort of distinctive positive that I've seen in my reporting or in listening to what people are saying about the synod is that in certain Catholic cultures, for the first time, lay people have been able to speak in a public setting about how they see the church and how they've experienced the church. When I say that, I'm thinking particularly of Poland. My wife's Polish, and we have long had a kind of interest in the Polish Catholic Church, which is obviously a very strong Catholic culture, where Catholics are the majority, but also where there's a strong kind of episcopal leadership and a strong clerical leadership.
Right.
So in that kind of culture, the synodal process has been experienced by many people as something genuinely new and sort of refreshingly new, and they feel that they've been given a voice. They feel that they've been given a voice that they didn't have before, and that the synodal process has obliged the church leadership to listen to them in a way that it hadn't done before.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Sorry, you go. Rich.
No, I'm just, there's so much, it is really interesting. I think I had a couple of questions on what are the issues left on the table, like having sort of some of these controversial, like what are some of the major ones that are left on the table? And also, okay, going back to your definition that we're kind of working with Pope Francis' definition here of walking together and discerning together and praying together. I don't remember walking together, discerning together.
Walk, question, and discern.
Right, walk, question, discern.
Right.
And and some of the critiques I think are even within that definition. Is it a together if it's such a small number of people that are participating? And these are valid points of sort of conversation, I think. But I was just sort of, okay, on good faith, I'm going to sort of take this definition. It seems to me like a relational project, like something's really about, it's not really like, it's different from what I thought, like synods where we're trying, it is always relational, but relational in focused on doctrine and focused on clarifying some things or clarifying particularities within, relationships maybe between different rights or whatever. There's a particular issue that has problematized certain relationships within the church, and we're going to work on those relationships by focusing on those issues and clarifying some of the things here and doing with the Holy Spirit. And that has sort of been a magisterial or at least an Episcopal project, or like, it's mainly involved bishops and sort of authoritative figures in the church. This is my understanding in the past. This is okay. We're not really focusing on those sort of levels of authority. But we're also not really, it doesn't seem to be really focusing on any specific issues. And this is why I want to know, like, what's kind of left on the table. Because it seems to me, okay, this is really about, talking to each other. And it's very interesting that it's been sort of framed in this synodal package, which I'm trying not to not take seriously. But in some ways, I'm almost like, okay, maybe the language there is tripping us all up, where this is how the Pope is like, we should do it this way because this is the only vehicle he could sort of see. But really, the point is that we actually talk to one another, and we just try to sort of connect. Like we need to connect here in ways that we've been disconnected, and maybe the Holy Spirit through those connections can sort of illuminate some things for us that we otherwise wouldn't see, not even on basic issues, but maybe just in our life in the church as a body, because we're actually talking in a way that we've never talked before. And I can kind of, I'm just sort of rambling a bit here, but I'm like, because it is hard to, which I think is part of the problem that a lot of people have. It's hard to sort of see what it is that we're doing. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? So anyways, there's that. I just vomited up a whole bunch of things. I don't know if any of them made sense.
No, there's a lot.
But this is a great question. Like, what are the issues? So that's a great question. What would you say to that?
Well, going off what Synodality participants are saying right now, the one issue that remains, or the most important one, is women in the church. People are consistently saying women in the church is the issue. Once you clear away all these super controversial topics that are going to be handled by working groups.
Right.
But what does that mean? What does it mean women in the church is going to be the big issue for reform? Well, it seems like there's a perception that's come out of the synodal process so far that women aren't properly included in church matters, in a sense of offering advice and helping to operate or govern. I mean, govern's a bit of a controversial word to use in the Catholic Church because it's a very specific definition. But this seems to be what people say. There's a problem in the Catholic Church has a woman problem, or problem with women as role. This is what seems to be meant by it. And the synod is called, they say, to tackle the subject and ensure that women are involved at all levels, included at all levels in the Catholic Church. This is what they say. And it's possible to do that, even though the women deacons is no longer a discussion that's going to be going to dominate this session next month at the Vatican. So that's what. And then there's perhaps another group of people, like the cynics or the critics, who say, well, all that's left really is to talk about how we can have better meetings. This is the Synod on Synodality is left with just being a meeting about meetings. The Synod on Synodality is meeting on meetings. So we're discussing, like, what is the correct form for a meeting, basically drawing up meetings rules. I think like the Robert rules for the Catholic Church. So that's the cynics' view. The kind of the hopeful, very engaged view is that the Synod has a massive contribution to make to the question of women in the Catholic Church. But again, I'd say that that question, the energy around that question, varies from country to country. In German-speaking countries, that's an issue that's coming up all the time. People are constantly raising that. In England, people don't talk about it so much. In Africa, I think there's a big kind of push to involve Catholic women and to sort of highlight their contribution to the church. Asia, I don't know. I don't see it so much. So Latin America. Everyone has a sort of different perspective on it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's funny also that you mentioned the even the German church, because you have a lot of these things happening side by side. So the German church went through they're going through their own process of synodality, and I think this is partly why it unnerves a lot of people
Yeah.
with respect to the process, because I was telling Rachel just before we came on that I read an article that one of the bishops in Germany has engaged queer sensitive pastoral workers
Yep.
who are, doing blessings for those who are celebrating their gender transition, which is, this is a cooperation with evil, according to, church moral teaching. I would argue that anyways. So you have things like that are really, that are very concrete on the ground. Okay, here is something that's happening under the guise of synodality. So how can we not think that there is a danger, in a sense, to synodality? And I can feel that in myself, even, thinking about that. Or there was another friend of mine who was participating in the synod on youth, when they had the synod on youth. And so she was one of the kind of young people. She was a young adult. So, in her, I think, late 20s at the time. And so she went and she kind of described this beautiful process of the meetings were amazing. The table group meetings were like, there was so much kind of fruit that seemed to be coming out of there. And then each group was kind of sharing their what they were seeing. The Lord was kind of saying to them, speaking to them about these things. And each group, it seemed like there was actually a very beautiful kind of consensus that was coming from all of these groups together. And then none of those things made it into the final report on youth, which is, so I'm like, how is that? That felt like I could feel in myself a disappointment about that. And so there's kind of those things that I can feel this inner struggle in me, towards cynicism or things like that. But then also at the same time, I feel this struggle in myself because I don't believe that Francis is an anti-pope. He is the Holy Father. The Lord is doing something there. And also, like Romans says, God works for the good in all things. Like he can, even in with the synod, even if there are things that come from it that are maybe not, we wouldn't see as fruits, or we would see as things that need to be ironed out later, the Lord will do that. Like he can do that. It's his church. He is still taking care of his church, so it's like kind of a constant. I feel those things in myself. Yeah. And I wonder what the experience is like for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think mentioning Germany, I think it's pretty important to point out that Pope Francis is a critic of the German synodal way.
Right.
And he's referred to it as the so-called synodal way, because he doesn't believe that it's a genuinely, he doesn't believe it's what he means by synodality.
Right.
And in a way, I think you could argue that the synodal way was one of the factors that prompted Pope Francis to launch a global synodal process, to say, well, this is actually how synodality should truly operate, and the German process must be part of this. And you have to bring it into line with what the whole Catholic world is saying. I think that may have been one of his motivations in launching this whole process. He doesn't think it's a genuine synodal process because he believes it's too close to a kind of parliamentary system,
right?
In which X can be defined as Y. That if you have a majority of people who would tell you that it's Y, if they agree that it's going to be Y. And he's saying this isn't the synod and synodality. On the other hand, there are quite a lot of people around the organisation of the synod and synodality who are sympathetic towards the German synodal way, who have said quite positive things about it and see it as potentially a model for the global process. So there's a bit of a tension there between what Pope Francis says about it and what other people around the organisation are saying. An unresolved tension.
That's it's very good to know that. And I also, it's interesting I am one of those lay people that I think is quite removed from this whole, process. And I've sort of been watching it from quite a distance and not really terribly engaged with it over the last few years, which I don't know, I maybe have to think about that a little bit in terms of just my own, just like praying for the church and loving the church. I probably should be more engaged than I have been, but it sort of hearing then from people like you and reading some things where people are watching this and keeping close track of it from a perspective that's not quite, not fully sort of given to an ideological bent, but is really trying to see what's going on here and actually just appreciate whatever it is that's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly, like all of it. I think it's helpful. It's kind of just highlighting what is going on in the church, like this tension that you're talking about between the Pope and the German so-called synodal way is a tension that's important. Like as a member of the body, I'm like, okay, this is important for me to just see that these kinds of tensions are currently a part of the landscape of what's going on in the church at a higher level. And, my prayer is needed sort of here, like as a lay member who prays for the Holy Father, like I need to pray in these places, like pray for him in these places and pray for the church and the magisterium in these places. And it's like, yeah, maybe it's not what was intended by the Synod on synodality. But one interesting thing it seems to be doing is magnifying some of these places of tension in the church, just for those of us who are praying, who are just part of the body and want to pray for the Lord's will and for the Holy Father and for the magisterium and all these things. So it's just interesting that, I feel like it's kind of highlighting, magnifying some of the things that otherwise might have been more hidden and maybe normally should be hidden. I'm not saying that these things should always come to light, but yeah.
But I think in Pope Francis' view, these tensions should be brought to the surface.
Right.
And I think that's what he means about the sort of question together stage, that we should be frank about what we believe and then, go out to fight for it and have a clash. He's quite comfortable. I mean, way more comfortable than I am with conflict in the church.
Me too.
He has a great tolerance of that because he believes that it will eventually sort of overflow into a kind of something new, kind of discernment. I mean, the supporters of the Synod on Synodality say that this is a route out of polarization, and you can personally pray that's true. That there is some kind of way beyond that. On the other hand, we haven't seen any evidence, I think, that there's any less of polarization in the church. It could even have increased through the synodal process. That's a big debate that's probably worth having. On the other hand, perhaps one of the things that Pope Francis has been doing by getting us to argue about these topics for 3 years is to drive everyone to the brink of exhaustion, so that therefore these issues just don't have the same kind of energy. We just can't. Everyone on all sides is just so tired now.
It's like getting a toddler to like run around a thing so that they sleep well.
It's actually really hilarious.
So now you're left
I love it.
to trying to put those to the side and focus on this, what the church really needs. Its real needs in our time. I don't know, half of me wonders if it's like that kind of like that's a kind of
like just get it out of our system, guys.
Subtle plan of Pope Francis. Just so everyone can have their say, and then look at it honestly. Is this really what the church needs?
Right
now.
It's a mystery. We'll see. I guess.
I love that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Just picturing us all as like little toddlers. I mean, maybe. Yeah. No. Go ahead, Luke.
I mean, I think we are. This has been a long process, and it seems like it will end when the next session of the Synod on Synodality ends in Rome at the end of October. But on the other hand, you still have these study groups going. So there's kind of indeterminate. It's indeterminate at the moment when it's going to end. But I think at some point, everyone's expecting there to be some kind of outcome or some kind of decisions. And I think that's a point at which there's going to be probably quite a lot of conflict, or a kind of upsurge of conflict within the church, because Pope Francis will certainly feel the pressure to make some kind of decision on X or Y topic that's been discussed for so many years. And so many of his, not just the critics, but his supporters expect him to make these kind of dramatic decisions. So I think, there should come a crunch point, unless the whole thing just goes on forever, ever and ever. The synodal process is just without end. It'll just roll into the next meeting in Rome and so on. I think that's actually conceivable, because Pope Francis has extended the process again and again. Partly forced to do so by the coronavirus crisis, but voluntarily he's extended it.
That's so fun. I'm like, I hear Bishop Barron so often in my head, like just little things that I've watched, but partly it's because he's very clear about some things, so he's good to listen to. But it reminds me of when he was talking about the council, like how councils kind of work. Church councils is like you come to the council, everything is kind of up in the air. You're really examining these things. You land somewhere, and then you get on with the work of the church, which is evangelization. So you don't take that questioning of everything into the continuing kind of functioning of the church, because it is destabilizing. It is, and so it's there's a difficult balance there if we want to kind of move forward in a sense with taking some of the fruits of the synod in terms of voices being heard, or the people's ability to express things to their bishops, to their priests, and for those things to be taken into consideration, which I do think is a good thing. And I can use actually my parish priest as an example, even because he's such a man of humility. And he wants to hear from the people that who are in his flock, and take those things into consideration, and take people's, experiences and point of view. And then he also is a very strong leader, so he can make a decision and then move forward in a particular way, which is such a beautiful thing. Oh, yeah. And right. And so it is, I think it will be probably moving forward, kind of as you say, like it depends on where things land, and if we're continuing for longer in the sense of synodality, or if it becomes more of a culture in the church of carrying it forward, what that means against the backdrop of we're examining things, everything's up in the air. Does that kind of continue, or do we come to a landing spot that we're able to move forward in a concrete way as a church? Yeah. It's a great question.
Yeah, and something that Pope Francis always emphasizes whenever he talks about synodality is also mission. But he never fails to talk about mission when he's talking about the synodal church or building a synodal church. So I think his vision is that this will help the Catholic Church to evangelize, to go out on its mission. How will that happen? You might reasonably ask, how, in what way will synodality help Catholics in the mission? I mean, some people say it offers a model for how people can approach each other from very different perspectives and listen to each other.
Right.
That may be true. It may be true. It may be a model that the Catholic Church is pioneering now that can be shared with others. Perhaps that's the case. Does it help missionaries in their work? I don't know. There's big questions. It remains to be seen, I think. Yeah. But certainly for Pope Francis, you get the impression that he wouldn't be doing this if he didn't feel that it was going to benefit the church's overall mission and make it more dynamic. This is the kind of stuff that he really does passionately care about. Bringing the faith further, having people who are alive in their faith, sharing their faith. So he has that conviction. But the question is whether the process will meet his expectations. Right. It's the first time we've ever been holding such a process. The first time we've had a process on such a massive scale in the Catholic Church. So it's experimental. And do experiments largely fail? Yes, they do.
Right.
Especially the first time you do them.
That's right. That's a great point. Yeah.
So we may not. This may be bad news for people that are very weary of synodality, but this may just be the first attempt at building a synodal church, and there are many further iterations to come. Probably this century, or I mean, who knows? No one could predict the future.
Yeah,
It's possible that this is just experiment number one, which will have its successes and have its dramatic failures.
Wow.
Sorry.
There is a potential. I like even looking at things from a potential of listening, and from being able to grow in our ability to do that with each other, and to listen not for the sake of being able to offer a rebuttal or an argument, but listening for the sake of understanding the person. That's always for the sake of building relationships. That's always a good thing, I think. So that's true. That's definitely for me anyways. I think that's one thing that I could take away as a fruit of the synod potentially. Yeah. So you were going to say something, Rach?
No, I think I'm just like, there's so I'm just sort of making sounds that just reflective of, there's so much in my head right now.
But I think you got the question of whether it is just that model of like enabling people to listen to each other, or whether there's a whole lot more to it than that. Whether it is about drawing lay people into the governance of the Catholic Church in new ways, because obviously it's already happening in certain ways, but in properly defining or increasing the level of lay governance. And I think it sort of remains to be seen whether this is a kind of beginning of a movement in which lay people are sort of increasingly kind of governing things in the Catholic Church. That would be a big cultural change, especially in many parts of the Catholic world. There's also like the question there of what is a synod? What kind of authorities does it have? And I think everyone would basically agree that a synod is an advisory. It's only advisory. At the end of the day, all it can do is issue recommendations to the Pope, and it's obviously the Pope's choice at the end of the day on everything, no matter how empowered, if you like, the synod and synodality is just an advisory body at the end of the day. And I think that's probably something if you're anxious about the synodal process, something to bear in mind. That there are sort of limitations to it. There truly are limitations to what it's able to do.
Well, it's good.
Yeah, this has been so helpful. Thank you for this. I'm just like, there's so much more, but I'm sure we could talk about this for days. For years apparently, because that's existed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, decades. Yeah, who knows? Hundreds of years. The church is very old.
That's right.
Listen, Jesus is coming back before then. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. I keep saying that all the time.
Yeah,
that's great. Though.
Yeah, I think that like. There is sort of just my personal disposition towards this, and this conversation is given me more to sort of pray with. But I'm just sort of like, okay, Lord, I'm not called to be at this synod or involve myself somehow directly in it or anything like that. So I'm here, and I'm just a Catholic, and I'm sort of watching what's going on, and it's kind of confusing and somewhat troubling, but also I'm with Aaron sort of at that tension of like, I do trust the Holy Spirit sort of guiding us somehow in this somehow, like, the Lord is always with us. So what's happening, where is he here? And I'm sure, and I can't answer any of those questions really, but just, I kind of feel myself needing to give myself over to a level of trust that some mysterious good that God wills is going to come from this somehow, even if it's not a direct fruit of the synod, or maybe it will be. And it just kind of, and all the things that you've said about Pope Francis also have been very helpful, just to kind of appreciate at least his desire, or what he really kind of wanted out of this, whether or not it's what actually happens. And we just did an episode actually about Pope Francis, where we're just kind of tackling the kind of stuff that's in the church right now, where people can sort of take very, very extreme positions, personal sort of positions on him. Right. And
either he's the Antichrist or he's Jesus reincarnated. Yeah, not that we believe in reincarnation.
But it kind of has really, that episode that we did just really kind of ignited an even deeper love for the Holy Father in me, where I was like, I just really feel called. I just want to pray for him well, as a Catholic. And I think this conversation has sort of is really featuring into that impetus, I think, that I experienced in our Pope Francis conversation of just like, okay, as lay people, one of our works, of prayer is to pray for the church, and to pray for what's happening in the life of the church right now, whether we kind of understand it or whether we think it's good or bad or wherever we fall, to genuinely pray. And so thank you. I just feel like this conversation has helped me kind of pray more, or pray from a better place about this. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
That's good.
Yeah. I want to echo everything that Rachel said, and then maybe we'll just turn it over to you, Luke, for if you have any closing thoughts or your own sense of the synod or anything else you'd like to share.
I think just when I think of the synod, one image keeps coming back to my mind, which is the image of the hall in which the discussions took place last October. And what you see in that image is a series of circular tables at which bishops and priests and religious and lay people are sitting around together. Now, that is an image of the church. And to me, that's the image of the church being presented by the synod and synodality. Now, what I see there are the good things is that people are sitting face to face, all members of the church, all levels, sitting in a kind of equal footing around a round table with it. What troubles me about it, on the other hand, is that it's a very, to me, this is speaking personally, it's quite a secularized image of the church. It's not a liturgy, it's not Eucharistic devotion, it's quite a horizontal image of the church. Now, is the church horizontal? Yes, of course it is. Relationships among Catholics are an incredibly important part of the way that the church operates. But there is also so much more, the transcendent dimension. The organisers of Synod know that, appreciate that, build in prayer to every single day's meeting. But there's still that image at the end of the day that sort of rests with me. Is this the full image of the church? To me, there's something a bit missing from that picture. Just a level of an image. So that's just kind of, I suppose, on my heart and mind when I think about the synodal process is that great good there. Also, perhaps something missing to have a complete kind of picture of the church.
That's so helpful. Thank you.
That's beautiful. I love that too. So thank you. Maybe we went even longer than we wanted to, which is, I mean, I'm not surprised by it. This is a conversation that you could have for hours and there would still be more to talk about, I think. But maybe you want to save your God wink for the next episode,
sure.
Rachel?
I can do that.
Okay, perfect. But thank you so much, Luke. We're really grateful that you were able to join us. And, and the gift, the hope is that people will really be able to listen and kind of see nuance in their own hearts and be able to listen and dialogue well with other people, which is really important. And then also, like you say, Rach, at the end of the day, to be able to pray, because we are called to pray, and it's a real call, and it has real effects. If the whole church is, praying for the things that are happening in the church, that really does. It turns all of our hearts towards God, and that is never a bad thing. That's right. So that's good. Yeah. But hopefully, dear listener, you have found some kind of nuggets to sit with and some things that have helped you to understand the synod on synodality a little bit better. And we are very happy to hear your feedback. So you can follow us on Instagram. It's In the Thicket Podcast. On Instagram, or you can go on Facebook, or you can send us an email. inthethicketpodcast.com is our web address. And we're very happy to hear if you have thoughts on this episode or any of the other episodes that we have, and we hope that it sparks discussion. So do you want to share maybe where people can find you, Luke, or find the Pillar?
Yes, of course. So the place to find us is pillarcatholic, all one word, .com, and of course on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Awesome.
I love that. That's always, I wonder every time I hear that when we're going to be able to drop formerly known as Twitter, because everybody says that. That's great. Excellent. All right. Well, we are looking forward to being with y'all again next week. And we will next week have with us Josie Lombardi, who is a theologian. She teaches at St. Augustine Seminary in Toronto, and she's been involved in the synodal process in her diocese and kind of on the national level and things like that. She wrote a book on Marian aspects of synodality. So we'll kind of continue this discussion next week. We look forward to being with you. Until then, everybody,
thanks, guys.
God bless you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough, and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless, and see you next week.